Alrighty, guys. We've got a very interesting show today. I hope all of y'all are having a good morning or afternoon, depending on where y'all are at, East or West Coast. Today is going to be a little bit different, although it is going to be SOG adjacent. But we are going to be joined today by a outstanding guest that I've been trying to get together with for a while, but schedules have been conflicting. But we are joined today by Mr. Greg Walker. He is a author. He is a Special Forces historian, and he is also a Special Forces veteran. And it's his knowledge about SF history and along with his unit when he was deployed, the knowledge on that he's gained through the years of investigations and research is just astounding. So we've got a great informational show today. I'm going to let Mr. Greg introduce himself and bio on himself, and then we're going to get started with an interesting topic right off the bat, guys. Mr. Greg, the floor is yours.
Hey, good morning, Bud. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. And I want to first say you're doing just remarkable, great work putting these together and getting the guys on to share their stories and getting them archived so that we have them, uh, long after all of us are gone. So kudos on that. It's been fun to watch you.
Thank you.
As far as a bio, went into the military in 1975. Served for a short time with the 2nd 75th Ranger Battalion at Fort Lewis. Got injured, went down the street to 2nd, the 1st Infantry Recon, then with 9th Division there at Fort Lewis. Spent the rest of my first enlistment tour there. Really enjoyed it. Outstanding unit. Left there as a platoon sergeant. And then just careened my way towards Special Forces. Went to SFQC 3-80 and served in the 10th and then went down to 3-7 in Panama. Got out in 1985. Stayed with the Special Operations Reserve Program, so I was in the 12th, 19th, and did a number of DEMA, what they call DEMA tours, where I was actually assigned to an active duty group, and I would go back and train or do MTTs with them. So really, really enjoyable career. I got to do a lot of things that I probably wouldn't have been able to do if I'd stayed active and retired after 20 or some odd years. And finally retired in 2005 out of 19th Group. Our company was the only Guard unit that was activated out of the Special Forces community for Operation Iraqi Freedom. We took 82 operators over in 2002. All of our teams deployed. Matter of fact, 912 was selected as General Gary Harrell's personal PSD team when Harrell was SOCCENT commander at that time, and they went into Baghdad with General Harrell. Came back, retired in 2005, and just kind of ended up going into taking care of our wounded, injured, and ill with the SOCOM Care Coalition, and finally fully retired in 2018. And just an old guy living in the woods out in Sisters, Oregon, in a little log cabin, brother.
Living a good life, enjoying yourself after a outstanding career. It sounds like.
Yep, absolutely.
You and I've got some pictures I'll be showing, but considering besides how great your work as a historian, not only for special forces, but a person we'll be speaking in great detail about today, Mr. Mike Chanas, just an outstanding and inspirational warrior. in his own right. We'd like to maybe speak about a little bit about your amazing work with the wounded vets, and also considering I get a lot of questions about when I share story or pictures or videos from the reunion in Las Vegas, the SOAR reunion. I thought it might be interesting if you could give a little bit of insight, considering you were so close with Mr. Jim Butler, the founder of SOA. Could you speak a little bit about that and your work with the Wounded Warriors?
Sure. First caveat with this, I appreciate your compliment regarding my work, but like in anything else in special forces, it's the result of teamwork. And I've been blessed to meet and know and get good guidance and direction and all that stuff from just some wonderful people over the last 50 years. So if the great work actually goes to them, I'm really and truly just a conduit, and I enjoy being in that role. I became aware of the SOA, the Special Operations Association, many years ago. Jim Butler, the founder, 10 for RT Python, Combat and Control North, had gone to work at the same insurance agency that my dad was working at. And my dad was an exceptional estate planner, and he met Jim and kind of watched him and saw that he was having some challenges getting into the business, and went in and sat down in his office one day and talked with him and learned about his background. And he just came out of there and said, "I think this guy would be phenomenal." And he went to the office manager and said, "I'd like to mentor Jim in estate planning," which was totally unusual because my father never mentored anybody. And he asked Jim, he said, would you like me to work with you? And Jim said, "Yeah, I really would." And so my dad did that, and Jim just, once he knew the rules of the road and that had a good mentor, he became phenomenally successful in that business. And I had met him coming down from Fort Lewis on leave. I think it was 1977, and Jim asked me. He said, "What are you going to do in the military?" And I said, "Well, I'm always wanted to, be a Green Beret ever since I was 14 years old. So I'm going to end up doing a second tour and volunteering to go to the Q course, go to Special Forces." And Jim looked at me and he got this quizzical look. And he said, "Why the hell would you want to do that?" And which was a really fun memory. Anyway, I did. I ended up completing the course and going 10th group. And that's when Jim brought me into the association as a associate member at the time. And that was 1982. And then several years ago, I was able to upgrade my membership to a general life membership because the organization had opened itself up because of the global war on terrorism, and that Eldon Bargewell in particular vetted units and conflicts and campaigns, and so they opened up the membership so that those of us that weren't MACV-SOG would have the opportunity to become members and participate and help to grow the organization into the next generations. So that's how I became involved. Yeah.
And excuse me again, that's going to be a problem. I apologize, guys. When I clear my throat, I'll try and use my cough button. But are you? I can imagine you are. I've heard varying rumors that that they were all especially Mr. Jim, there for a while. He was trying to find his guys, as it's been said, the SOGmen, so to speak. And there's varying reports on what the when the first reunion was, and I've heard stories from men that were with Mr. Jim and were supposedly at this one, that one of the first ones was very small, very, very small, and was is even as early as 1971 at Fort Devens, where a group of the SAW guys got together. Do you know when Mr. Jim really started getting all of the guys in together and made it a formal thing, as opposed to an ad hoc little reunion that they had on base or what have you, or at someone's home?
I went to my first SOAR in 1981 when I was at DLI, and Jim had opened his own office down in Carmel, California, and that's actually when I came in was 1981. So I went to my first SOAR from there, and that was in Las Vegas, and uh, prior to that, I'm not aware. I know that his intent was to bring guys together that he knew, and he outlines that pretty nicely on the SOA webpage. But they were, and I talked to Harry Coughlin, who's a member and had been to some of the very early SOARs. They were a lot different than they are today.
Oh yeah.
1981 was a lot different than they are today. Uh, much much more horseplay, much rowdier.
People, celebrities showing up. I mean, G. Gordon Liddy. Gosh, what's the famous? Not S.L.A. Marshall, but the other great author.
Dick Marcinko.
No, he's my dad will kill me.
I didn't see any celebrities in '81. It was all SOG guys and project guys, and uh, it was a lot of fun. And
I can imagine.
so that was my first SOAR, and they have over the years, it's become a much more sophisticated organization. It does so many different outreaches, scholarship programs. Uh, there's a fund for guys that can't financially may not be able to get to SOAR, and so they take care of bringing guys out that are in that situation. It's become a very truly a remarkable organization. I do think that Jim, if he were still with us, would opine that the early ones were never to be forgotten, or should be forgotten, unless behind closed doors.
Absolutely. I've heard some really good stories of some of those early ones. And in fact, it was some of the early ones you could say were uh reunion, in the sense a college fraternity would have a reunion, as opposed to as it is now, to where you dress up and you're in suits and ties, and it's a
Oh
very,
yeah,
very dignified event, as opposed to back then when they were filling ice bathtubs full of ice, and got beer in every room, and people were getting married there, and I've heard some wild tales coming out of those first ones.
you mentioned celebrities, and it just occurred to me the one person who I would consider a celebrity that was at the '81 SOAR was Frenchie Adamson. And Frenchie was a female French resistance fighter during World War II, and she was invited to be a guest of honor in '81. And she was just fascinating to sit and talk with. Uh, she had been captured by the Nazis. She had been tortured. She had been sent to a concentration camp. She survived that. and she was just one of those legends that Butler and the founders, really enjoyed bringing in to remind everybody of our historical roots and the debt that we owe to those that came before.
We've got Mr. Terry from CCC. He was with C Company in the 7th from 70-72, and he also just put the early soars were crazy because we were a lot younger before the wheelchairs and walkers took over. There was a good joke. It may have been Mr. John Plaster or may have been Tilt. But he's like, it's wild. We're used to, we're looking at our pictures every day, and when we're young, spry young men, and we all get together, and we notice now that there's a parking lot for the motor scooters that some of the guys ride up in, and then ride the escalator up, and
Yep.
he thought that was pretty funny, and I'll say that was one thing that I will never forget and will always cherish, being able to attend and getting to spend 4 or 5 days with y'all. It's unlike anything. It's literally uncomparable to anything.
Yeah, that's it. It really is, and one of the highlights for me, because of the work that I did from 2009 to 2018 uh, in behavioral health and substance dependency, working with our wounded, injured, and ill. They now have the guys come out who are very familiar with the SOCOM Warrior Care Program, and they're with the VA, and they have an actual table, of course, and this year, the guys saw 132, I believe it was, of members come in and sit down and open claims or have them check on claims or to do all sorts of really, really neat things. And that's become kind of a staple at SOAR. But I was talking to one of the facilitators there, and he said, this has just been incredible. He said, this is the most guys we've had who have sat down and said, I need to get a claim opened, or I need somebody to help me. So that's what makes SOAR fun too, as well.
Besides, of course, the obvious thing of it being a reunion, and guys, it's gotten to where a lot of the guys aren't coming because of health and all of that were normally mainstays at it. Mr. John Plaster is starting to come few and far between, and I was lucky enough to attend when he showed up to see everybody, and it's really amazing just getting all of y'all there together. It's really something I'll never forget, being meeting guys that I've been speaking to or hearing about, and then being so gracious enough to sit me down and talk to me on first meetings. And it's unbelievable getting to do that aspect of things. But when I later learned at the banquet and throughout the week just how much work the SOA does, not only for the veterans, but scholarship funds, helping out with homeless veteran foundations, food banks. It's really turned into a more than just a reunion.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Yeah, and I think that would be a good way to kind of transition into some of the Wounded Warrior stuff that you've been working on. Would you care to tell what where some of our veterans watching or that will be watching, what maybe they can do? I know I just showed a Facebook where you've started getting some work done in Oregon in 2017-18. Can you speak a little bit about that? Some places that maybe some veterans can get some help.
Yeah, I came back from Iraq in 2004. I went back over and was a high-risk security contractor and a team leader for the Coalition Provisional Authority in Baghdad. Worked for Colonel John McMullen, who was a dear friend, had passed away a couple of years ago now. John and I were involved in the El Salvador combat recognition effort, which was a 10-year effort, but we were successful. I came back in 2004. I went back into law enforcement. By 2006, I realized that wasn't working for me. I had met a fellow here who was a Vietnam veteran, EOD, Georgetown trained attorney after he got out of the Army. And he was a service officer, veteran service officer for the Vietnam Veterans of America. Well, I sat down and was talking with Stu, and at some point Stu said, "Greg, you need to get some help." And I thought, with what? And he said, you got some stuff going on, brother. Long story short, I ended up medically retiring in 2006 from the agency I was working for here. And ended up, my wife and I relocated back over to Portland because a rural veteran is really hard pressed to get good care and treatment just about anywhere in the country. And I went back to school as well. Stu navigated me through the VA Chapter 31 program. And I spent about 3 good years just working on Greg. And as with anything, that those of us that come out of the units that we do, I was just determined that I was not going to, I was just not going to stay in the place that I had come to, and so I committed fully to care and treatment, and was able to graduate in 2009. Was far further down the road than I had been when I got there. And I got an interesting email from a good friend of mine by the name of Rob Crott. And he said, "Hey, are you interested in maybe working for these guys?" And it was right out of the blue. And I knew nothing about the SOCOM Care Coalition, but I knew I wanted to go back to work and I needed to go back to work. And I knew I was not going back to work into law enforcement because as one of my really wonderful therapists has told me, let me get this right. You've done 24 years in the military, 2 wars. You were a contractor in Iraq right after, and you did 10 years on the street as a cop. She said, that makes you a trauma magnet. And she was right. So anyway, I got in contact with the folks out in Tampa. I flew back, did 3 interviews, and was hired as a part of a 9-person team at that time called the CCRP. And we worked with the most seriously wounded, injured, or made ill special operations guys and gals at that time. And all of us went through DOD training as case managers. We were positioned all over the country. I had Pacific Northwest, Hawaii, Japan, Korea, and then sometimes would pinch hit for other team members who had folks elsewhere in the country that they couldn't get to. Worked with some of the most phenomenal people on that team. And we had to be ready to go within 24 hours. Your BlackBerry would go off at 9 o'clock at night, and my boss would say, you need to be in Alaska in Fairbanks tomorrow evening or the next day latest, because we have somebody up there who's needs help. And I did that for 5 years. It was an amazing learning experience. Met some of the most phenomenal clinicians, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, doctors, therapists, you name it. I mean, we were right in the mix, and we could do great things for people. The Care Coalition was the brainchild of two senior SFNCOs, both named Thompson. One was black and the other was white, and so we called them the Thompson twins. And these guys had realized we're losing our guys in the system as it now stands. They're just falling through the cracks, and they can't navigate the VA system. The majority of them, like myself, if somebody else needs to help, I'm not messed up that bad or hurt that bad or injured that bad. And so they sat down with the command in Tampa and pitched the program, and it went forward and was phenomenally funded. We could do things like I would get a phone call from a spouse, and she'd say, "Greg, our dishwasher just went out, and we don't have the money to replace it right now, and what's going on with with my husband and family situation and everything else." We were able to. Can you go back to split screen?
Yes, sir. Hang on one sec. There
Thank
you go. Yeah.
I'd rather look at you than look at me.
That's fine. That's fine. Some guests are
frightening looking at me, quite frankly. And
I'm sorry.
Well, we could literally just say, okay, what's the make? What's the color? And we could have a brand new dishwasher or dryer or clothes washer in that house within 24 to 48 hours at no cost to the family. That's how deep we could drill down. The whole goal was to take as much unneeded, unnecessary stress off of this family and our wounded comrade, so they could focus on what was truly important. So that was a phenomenal 5 years. Towards the end of the 5th year, I was getting burned out and wanted to be closer to home and not travel as much as I was. So I went to work for a small psychiatric hospital in Portland that had a truly interesting inpatient care program for the military and for veterans, a 28-day program. And it dealt with behavioral health as well as substance dependency and things like that. And so I became their first military liaison, and I was essentially doing what I was doing for the Care Coalition, but it was a little narrower in scope, and I didn't have to travel as much. And I did that until 2018, and that was incredible work. There was just, by then, more and more veterans and more of the active duty were coming forward with their issues, and we were able to get them into good care and treatment. And then our guys would come in, and I would roll them back to the Care Coalition. I developed a relationship with the Wounded Warrior program as well, and so they were sending not only some of our guys, but they were sending conventional force, guys and gals out, and it was just an incredible time. And I say this with, absolutely. I learned more about courage, strength, steadfastness, don't quit, never give up from my quote patients than anything I ever could have related back to them, especially some of the spouses. Just, unbelievable dedication and support. And of course, we had program tracks for them as well, so that they, because we knew that they were suffering too. And it was just a very phenomenal time. The program continues in Tampa. It's a Warrior Care program now. A little bit different than when I was there, but not so much. And Wounded Warrior program was phenomenal. I can't say enough about. They literally would once they gave a call and said, we have somebody, we need to get out to you, and here's your situation. These are guys and gals that were. I walked into one room with one Marine who had been brought in by Wounded Warrior program, and when I walked into his room that morning, I thought he died overnight. I thought, oh God, this guy's dead. Well, he wasn't dead, but he was pretty close to it. And they got him out there. They paid everything, transportation, the cost of the care and treatment. Can't say enough about Wounded Warrior program.
That's I've started. I guess I've become big enough for YouTube and all of that, with all the great people that are watching and subscribing and all that. I'm now qualified to earn, and it's peanuts, but I've considered getting it's once a month. It's not like it's going to be, at the most 200 or something like that a month, but now that I've always held Wounded Warriors, and because I search charitable foundations and make sure follow and see how much they give. They've got a great site that breaks that down, and I noticed they're high up there on that. And I've started considering, and I've pretty much sealed my mind on it after hearing you speak so highly of it, that everything that I earn off of this show will be going to the Wounded Warrior Project, because I'm not going to be earning money from talking to men and like you and getting history and all that. And I'm going to send it to warriors that need to be helped out and get back on their feet or what have you. So I think that's what I'm going to start doing.
That's very cool. It'll be going to a good place. They do a very good job. I know the CEO, General Linnington, retired. He has just taken the organization to new levels, very influential in DC. So it's a very good outlet. I also like Tunnels, the Towers as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good stuff.
Absolutely. I was recently looking up at them because one of the Navy SEALs that have podcasts now, he was mentioning that he had just made a rather large donation to Tunnels Towers, and I immediately started looking into them and was amazed that I had not heard anything about it. And was shocked that I didn't know about it, and they seem to be doing some amazing work. I'm so glad that all of you older guys are out here. No, if I'm not calling you old, I immediately regretted saying that, but some of you more experienced gentlemen, I should say, looking out for the guys up and coming now with all of this TBI from all of these raiding houses every night in Fallujah or in Afghanistan, getting rocketed or using Carl Gustavs and getting TBIs and all that. I'm glad to see that vets will have something to help them out, either with financial and finding jobs and stuff like that, but also know that there's a large community of older vets that are there to lend a helping hand when and if needed. So it's just amazing.
I don't mind at all being called old or older. I just had a conversation last week with a very dear friend of mine. He's a Vietnam era and Vietnam veteran, Marine Corps, and we were sitting around his store talking about our various aches and pains. He's a couple years older than me. I'm 70. Jerry is 72, I believe. And we were talking about our aches and pains, and I said, Jerry, I've just really realized it just really sucks getting older. And he looked at me and laughed, and he says, Greg, at least we're getting older. And I thought, that's a really good take on it. So it doesn't bother me at all. Actually, I enjoy getting older, and I enjoy the stage of life that I'm in now. But it took a lot of work over the last 15 years to to bring that state of mind to being.
It's amazing. They're definitely going to need help, and I'm glad to see there's a lot of stuff going on nowadays that the military seems to realize that they've got an issue with our special operators and our special forces men with their TBIs, just burnout. I don't know what the correct term is, but that my dad had post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't know if they like to call it PTS or what have you. But it's nice to know guys are going to have help coming out, because the Afghanistan guys are a lot of people don't realize we've still got people fighting in Syria right now that are being attacked by Iran. So I mean,
Right.
it's not like this is ended just because we left Afghanistan. So uh, the guys are going to need help, and I've been so glad to hear all about this and hearing about the organizations that they're doing good work. And I'll be definitely looking at Tunnels to Towers for also sending some money to, because guys, if y'all can do that as well, I'll do is I'll make a show the link to their website or their page in the show notes, or I may do it while we talk here today. But if y'all can do that with my donations, I'll try and match y'all on donations that y'all send in off of mine. I'll try and match every donation that y'all do. So that would be great if we could do that.
Uh, yeah, the last I would say on that is that we now have. I worked very closely with Medal of Honor recipient Leroy Petrie from 275 Ranger. I was his case manager. He was one of my first cases, and the medal was just being considered. And was fortunate enough to have been at 275 and with Leroy the morning that it was announced that it had been authorized. But Leroy has gone on to is now the president of the Medal of Honor Society. We have worked together numerous times over the years. Yeah, there he is. That's when he came down to Salem, Oregon, to lobby with me for better health care and mental health care for our Oregon National Guard and our veterans. But my point being is that there it is so much better today than it was for the Vietnam era guys in terms of services and so many of us have gone into working with our wounded, injured, and ill, and have our own stories to tell so we can cross reference. But the key is, if the guys and gals, if you think there's something wrong, there's probably something wrong. And the old adage, especially for our communities, whether it's SEALs or the TACP guys in the Air Force or combat and control teams with the Air Force or Special Forces or the Rangers, we have this built-in thing that we will suck it up. And I'm not as hurt as the next guy is, and I don't need to pursue this. And it's such a lie. It is part of the job, and our deployments over the global war on terrorism
Prove that.
have subjected our men and women in the special operations communities to more than had ever been done before. I went to a retreat with Dr. Ed Tick. I took 7 of my guys and 3 of their spouses back to Dahlonega, Georgia, is where the retreat was held. And a 3-day retreat, phenomenal retreat. One of the Vietnam veterans that was there was listening to one of my guys who was a Ranger Master Sergeant at the time. And he had deployed 14 times before he literally crashed and burned. And that's, over 6-month tour, come back, go right back into the training cycle, get ready to go again 14 times.
How can you do that?
It's there. I met one guy, unfortunately, he was killed on his 16th tour. And the Vietnam veteran just stopped everybody and he looked at this fella and he said, how in the world do they deploy you 14 times? He said, I did 2 tours and, I'm a hurting puppy today. He said, I can't even see how they would do that. And that was, such a impactful observation. We've got guys that are going back time and time and time again, and gals, and
That don't need to be doing that many times. I mean, that's crazy.
That's you're in the unit and that's your job, and it boils down to more than any of that. Your brothers and your sisters are going back.
It's a way of life,
and you're going back. I had a friend of mine who did 3 tours in Afghanistan. He went back for a 4th tour simply because he had picked the people to go on that particular mission from his unit. And he said, I was not going to hand pick these people and send them over there and not go with them because I had so much that I knew and so much experience, to give to them. And he got hit in a really bad VIED incident. There were 16 Americans that were wounded. But that's, and those that are out there listening, regardless of campaign or conflict, that's what we do. That is what we do and who we are. But when you get to the point where you can't function well anymore and you're hurt physically, you're hurt spiritually, you're hurt mentally, you're destroyed emotionally in some cases, you got to get help. And the help is out there. Leroy Petrie and the Medal of Honor Society put out several PSAs on just this subject. And they had, when you get Medal of Honor recipients from all the campaigns that are, on this PSA, wearing the medal and saying, hey, this is me, this is what I did. You guys, get help. The help is there. Get help. That's very powerful. So, I just encourage anybody, if you haven't gone in and signed up for the VA, get signed up for the VA. It's very simple. If you don't have a veteran service officer, go to the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the American Legion, contact the Warrior Care Program, contact the Wounded Warrior Project, get a veteran service officer. They do great work. They navigate the system for you, and they take the stress and the strain off of dealing with what is sometimes just you can't figure out why in the world, how does it work like that? Veteran service officers can deconflict that for you and get you the benefits that is part of your service package. And the best part about it is so many of the guys and gals today have come out of care and treatment, have found what we call a new normal, have repaired family relationships, marital relationships, have come to find honor again in their service and their sacrifices, and then turn right around and get back into some component where they can give back and be of service to their communities and that. This is a phenomenal book. It was done by Ed Tick. It's called Warrior's Return, Restoring the Soul After War. See if I can get it out of the light there. I read Tick's first book and then was pleased to contribute to Warrior's Return. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. We brought both of Ed's books. The first one is War in the Soul, and then Warrior's Return. We brought them both into the SOCOM Care Coalition and got them out to our families and spouses and guys because it's just, the information is just so good and meaningful. But that's my spiel on that. Get the help and get the benefits that you deserve, that you've earned, and get back on track, get back on mission.
And guys, I know much like the older guys, the younger guys they're not young anymore. I look at them, some of these guys younger because I've just turned 33. But there's still that sense of being too macho, besides, like you said, not wanting to let the team down and continue going on deployment. But some of the guys I know have that macho streak in them, much like y'all did, or much like, well, I'm sure you did. You saw men injured when you were deployed that, weren't going to leave the team. They suck it up and keep on going. You got to, I saw my dad struggle with it, who would not go to speak to shrinks or whatever you'd like to call them. It does not make you any less of a man to go seek help, to get your life in order, to get your life back on track, and to make you a well-rounded, fully functional human being that can lead a excellent, productive, successful life after your military career.
Yep, absolutely. And we are doggone good at it. That's the bottom line. Once we take a knee and refit, if you will, and find our new pathway, we are exceptionally successful. And that's, in my mind, that's really what it's all about. Yes, there's nothing sadder than having help available and not taking it.
Absolutely, it's
That's
the
one
worst
reason
thing.
why we have I read an article 2 days ago. Our special operations community today, and has for some time, we have the highest rate of successful suicide in all the services and the components. And and the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and that aren't going to fix it.
No,
it is not. It's trying to. It tries, but it's not set up for that. And so it falls to those of us that are on the outside now to be the facilitators and navigators, and if we don't take care of each other, who's going to?
no one.
And that's the deal.
God, that's a solid stake in the end right there for that. I'm considering we're coming up on over 45 minutes here. I'd love to, we might can get some questions in, but I know people are going to want to hear about this. I would, if you're comfortable and willing, we would like to learn more about the man you have created a Facebook group, who I'm linked into the show notes to get some people in on that because Mr. Mike Chanas, hope I'm pronouncing that name correct. I butcher names. But we would like to hear about Mr. Mike and a little bit about his service, but how you came across and how you ended up coming across him and furthering his legacy and preserving his legacy like you've been doing.
Oh, okay, for sure. It's a Chanas, Mike Chanas.
Thank you, sir.
I I was introduced to the legend and myth of Mike Chanas in 1977 at 2nd of the 1st Recon. We arranged to have Tom Downing from 9th Division from the Recondo School come over and for a week do knife combatives with us in the morning. And Tom was one of Mike's instructors from his program at Fort Bragg back in 76, 77. And Tom put on a great block of training for us, but he would always refer to Mike Chanas. And I thought, who is this guy? Well, they sent me to Pathfinder School at Fort Benning shortly after that, and there was a Soldier of Fortune magazine in the day room, and there was an interview with Mike Chanas, and that was my first, okay, this is who this is. And I found him fascinating. I ended up, when I went to SFQC in 1980, two of my instructors had trained under Mike and had graduated his program in combatives and special weapons and tactics. And so here I'm hearing more, about this guy. And fast forward, I just I got into writing. I started writing things about Mike, and I dedicated a particular program in his honor. And over the years, I thought I'd really like to write a book about this guy, because there was so much myth and so much legend and so much nonsense and so much of the unknown about him. And this is a guy who was 27 years old when he was assassinated in Nicaragua, and was only in the public eye for about 4 years, yet he is still this legend, So again, I was back to square one. Who was this guy? And long story short, Mike was from Ontario, Oregon. He was raised in a Basque family. His dad and the brothers and everybody has served in the military, for generations. Mike volunteered for the Army, skipped his high school graduation, and went right into the Army in the late 1969. And one of the reasons he did that is that his cousin, who is very close to Major Ignacio Chanas, was a Air Force navigator and was shot down over Laos in late 1969. So Mike, in that idealistic state of mind that at 18, 19, 20-year-old that we all have to some degree, felt if I can get to Vietnam, I might be able to find out more about what happened, because Major Chanas was listed as MIA. So he went in the Army. He did attend SFQC. He was there for 2 phases, and they came in and said, "We're gonna, you guys that are supposed to go to 5th Group in Vietnam, you're not going there. We're down. We're starting to pull SF out, so you're going to be going to another SF group." And Mike and 2 other guys, I talked to one of the guys that he did this with, was very fortunate in finding him. They went in and they terminated. Said we want to go to Vietnam right now. And when Mike gave his reason, the cadre there, just as it just resonated with the cadre. This guy is doing. He was at the top of his class. And he said, "This guy wants to go to Vietnam to look for his cousin. We get that." And they said, "Okay, we're going to send you over there, and if you make it and come back and want to finish the course, just let us know." And that's in the good old days of special forces where you could do that kind of stuff. Yeah, that picture is of Mike. He took 30 days leave, went back home, and that was the day he flew out to go to Vietnam.
Wow.
And
So he's still got his training group beret right here. So this is evidently before he stopped and
no,
found out.
he was already out, but he was still technically in the unit, and so he flew. He traveled in his assigned unit uniform, and
Wow.
so he got over there. He was assigned to the 173rd Airborne. He immediately volunteered for Charlie Ranger 75th Infantry to do reconnaissance. Was accepted. Uh, Finished the 173rd Airborne Jungle School, which was 1 week. Finished the Recon School at Charlie Ranger, and uh, he had been in country for 2 months and was with 4 other Rangers in a deuce and a half going down to Pleiku because the unit was going to relocate to Pleiku from their current time, their location. And they got hit by a estimated company size NVA unit. Uh, Everybody was wounded. The only guy who was able to fight back throughout the entire engagement was Micah Chanas, as a young, he was a spec 4 at that time, and he got hit 4 different times. Uh, Such a small world. The senior sergeant in the truck with him, uh, who was also wounded, would go on to go into the Ranger Hall of Fame. Years later, retired as a command sergeant major out of Fort Benning. And in 1979 was my company sergeant major at Fort Benning. So just such a small world. But anyway, Mike, with 2 months in country, earned a Bronze Star with V device, Purple Heart, Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry. They thought he was hit so badly in the legs, they thought they were going to have to amputate his lower right leg. The surgeon there at the field hospital said he's so young that he just bandages him up as best he could and sent him to Japan. And Japan sent him to Letterman Army Hospital in California. Long story short, he was deemed to be 100% fully disabled, never walk again, never run again, never do anything again. Here's your cane, here's your brace, thank you for your service. 4 years later, this guy is a world-class martial artist. And in 1970, late 75, he's back at Bragg and hired to teach one of the most intensive hand-to-hand combat courses and special weapons and tactics courses that had come down the pike since World War II. He literally could not walk without wearing soft shoes. You always see a Chanas in either desert boots or black tennies. And he would roll a pair of socks up and put them under the arch of his right foot. As I recall, it was the right foot, because the muscle and tendon and ligament damage was so bad, and he had curvature of the toes as well, that without that brace and soft shoes, he could not walk. And so then for me, it became how did this guy do this? From Ontario, Oregon in 1971, 72. How did he do this? And so that became a quest. I've spent the last 15 years researching Mike's life and his service, and his mom and I met in 2012. Met the family in Ontario. Pat and I just hit it off, became very close friends, and I promised her I would write her son's story. And so we're in the final stages of that manuscript being completed, and the true and accurate story of Micah Chanas and Chuck Sanders, Bobby Nguyen, Joe Camp, Jake Jakovenko, Sante Rader. He just met the most phenomenal guys when he was at Bragg, and then he was contracted by then Commander of SEAL Team 2, Dick Marcinko, to train 3 classes of instructors for the SEALs out at Little Creek. And then he ended up going with the agency at Bragg and ended up on one of the most covert black operations in the books down in Nicaragua. And that in and of itself is an incredible story. When he passed away, when Chuck and Bobby and he were killed, and I found out exactly how they died, who was responsible for it. Just a tremendous amount of help from so many people. Jack McMull, General McMull out at Fort Bragg at the time, sent Jake Jakovenko's ODA 594 out to Ontario to be the color guard for the burials. That's how highly he was thought of. That's Bobby on the right. Bobby was a French Vietnamese orphan, became a interpreter for McVie SOG for CCN, and then Bobby was a phenomenal martial artist in the Taekwondo. He ended up becoming a captain in the South Vietnamese Airborne, and at the end of the war, his company held Tan Son Nhut Air Base until literally the NVA was inside, and then he led a breakout and managed to get his people over the coast and hooked up with the 7th Fleet. He was working with Mike in Nicaragua and he was killed. Larry Trimble on the left was 1-0 for RTASP, and Larry knew Bobby very well, and was immensely helpful in running down Bobby's history. So it's just been, every time I think I'm done researching, something comes up, some email comes in, some phone call comes in with another part of the story and documentation or photos, and it's just been quite the ride. But the book will be finished up here in the next several months, and then we're going to get it out to everybody. And he was also, that is Mike at Bragg, that's 77. The 2 guys in the civilian clothes with the crossbows are both were first generation Delta operators. And Mike ended up working directly for Charlie Beckwith, the founder and first commander of Delta, when he was at the schools there, and for Master Chief Bob Nisley, who was a friend of mine for years and years and years, was very close to Mike. He was the CIA. He ran the team that went to Nicaragua, essentially. But then the service member on the far left, that is Jimmy Jackson. Jimmy Jackson was captured in 1962. Same time Nick Rowe and Dan Pitzer were captured in Vietnam. Jimmy did 4 years in the cages. He was released with Dan. Dan is like my second dad. And Jimmy went on to go back to Bragg. He was involved with the medical program there. He also spoke on the challenges of being a POW. And he and Mike became very, very, very close. I met Jimmy's son, Alan, at SOAR this year. I had no idea he was going to be there. They just brought his dad's book out, Force of Darkness. Jimmy passed away about 4 years ago. And just had a wonderful meeting with Alan and exchanging thoughts and things like that. So bottom line, Chanas he had the charisma. He was like Dick Marcinko. He just had the look and the knack and the credentials and the personality that people people were just gravitated to him. This is a great picture.
Absolutely.
This was a myth for years. And the myth was that Mike had was when he was back on the East Coast that he had sparred with Chuck Norris and had knocked Chuck Norris out, and that was the myth. Well, in the course of the last 15 years, I ended up back on the East Coast, and I ended up uh, meeting and talking with the people that Mike trained with in Virginia Beach when Norris had opened his first 2 studios out there. And Mike didn't spar with Chuck Norris and knock him out. Mike ended up becoming very close to Chuck and his brother Aaron Norris, and was invited to teach at Norris's Hilltop studio in the evenings. And so Mike did that, and he became very close to Chuck and his inner circle. And this picture was taken when Chuck came out to visit the school. The other folks, there's more people in the photo, like Aaron's in the photo and that. Well, it turns out that Chuck Norris, his system was only teaching essentially Tang Soo Do and point fighting. And when they started training with Mike, Mike started showing him, okay, that ain't going to work in a street fight. That ain't going to work. And he would show him why it wouldn't work. And so they started incorporating Mike's knowledge base into the Norris system. And the best way to end cap that is this past summer, myself, Dan Branson, who's actually the creator of the Warriors of the Night Facebook page, and Mike's sister Liz and his younger brother Cam and John at Chanas. We all were invited down and went down to Las Vegas, and Chuck Norris and his brother Aaron had posthumously ranked Mike as a 5th degree black belt in the Norris system. And they announced that at the Thursday night banquet. Every year, Norris has the international world championships for his system there. And there we go. And so we went up on stage and some very good words were, this is Aaron Norris on the far left, and Rick Prieto is on the far right. Rick and Mike were very, very close as well. Rick is a 10th degree black, and he actually did the ranking ceremony there in Las Vegas. The Norrises have never posthumously ranked anybody and never will again. But they made it very clear that the realism in the Norris system is attributed to Micah Chanas's influence when he was teaching for them out at Hilltop. And it was quite the ceremony. Afterwards, Liza Chanas told me, she said, she said, with this, she said, we have our brother back again. And so that's the kind of journey it's been. I mean, who knew?
I've got a few photos. I wish I had the special forces. I've got him with an A team, but I've got a few of his drill photos that I wanted to bring up that maybe you could speak about. And guys, we won't have time to show it all, but I'm gonna link his Mr. Greg has done a great job restoring and putting out, instead of making us all pay for very rare footage of Mr. Mike. He's put it out on Facebook, and I will link the video in the show notes, or send it to y'all to where y'all can see him actually training, hearing him speak, which is, as far as I know, the only video to where Mr. Greg and them captured him speaking. So this is one of, I've got a few of his demonstrations, but he is, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Greg, is he about to be run over by a Volkswagen?
Yeah, he is. That was his Volkswagen. And Mike would do, he trained in Harangdo. He was a black belt in Taekwondo. He was highly ranked in Jiu-Jitsu. That was his first martial art. By the time he got down to California and trained in Harangdo, he was very accomplished. Harangdo for him was the ultimate martial art because there was no sport or contact, and there still isn't really to it. It's a very functional, combative martial art. And I interviewed Dr. Jubang Lee several times down in Los Angeles about his experiences with Mike. And they all do this demonstration. If you're a black belt in Harangdo, you do these demonstrations, and they're control of pain, energy manipulation, that kind of a thing. And part of Mike's contract at Bragg, as it turns out, and I have the contract, was that he would do these demonstrations as morale builders for the different units then on Fort Bragg. But you mentioned the video. That was another myth and another legend. I have a letter from Mike to his parents, a single-page letter, 1976, and he says, "Oh, and I'm making a video with the Army of what I'm doing here." And so I thought, okay, we've heard about a video. Now we have Mike saying he's making a video, but where's the video? It took 15 years to find what I think is the only surviving copy of that program. And part of the reason was when Mike was killed, the agency went into Fort Bragg and went into the archives and the historians' archives, and they removed everything. They got rid of it all because of the nature of that Nicaraguan operation. And so I'd kind of given up on it. And then a year and a half ago, Dan and I were talking, and Dan Branson, and I mentioned that, and he says, 6 months ago, a martial artist down in Florida sent me an email, and he said he has a copy of that. And as soon as I heard Florida, my ears perked up, because there was a direct connection going back years with one of Mike's friends and instructors, C.W. Evans, who had medically retired in Florida, in Jacksonville. And I thought, there's no way. But long story short, Dan found the email. I got in touch with the guy, wonderful old school martial artist, incredible story about the connection with the Chanas and his instructor's connection. And he says, yeah, I have it. I've had it. It's been sitting in my secure lockbox now for about 8 or 9 years. I haven't looked at it. He said, I inherited it from my sensei, who got it from, and I said, he got it from C.W. Evans, didn't he? And he goes, how did you know that? And I said, would you send it to me? And he says, and I thought, yeah, for a price or no way, and he said, yeah, I will, because, this needs to be seen. And I'm reading the Facebook, and you guys are doing such a great job of presenting this. So he sent it out. This be it right here. And I got it, and then I had to go on eBay and find a really good VHS player because I didn't have one. And I watched this thing, and I thought, this is incredible. And I had it turned into DVDs, cleaned it all up. The first 2 DVDs went to Mike's sister and his brother Cam. when they saw it. It was the first time they'd heard their brother's voice since he'd been killed, and then saw what he was actually doing, because they really didn't know what he was doing out at Bragg and how good he was. And then some of the others went to some very special people. Dan and I talked about it. People started coming in on the Facebook page saying, "Oh man," because we took little clips and we'd post little clips. And they said, "We want to, how much is that DVD going to cost?" And Dan and I talked about it. And there have been so many people that have made money off of Mike over the years, and wrongfully so. Wrongfully so. We both said, "Hey, let's just put it up on YouTube and put Warriors of the Night. It's ours, and make it available to everybody. Anybody who wants to watch it, anybody who wants to see." And that's what Dan did. So it's now available. It's called American Warrior, and I've had particularly Korean martial artists who have watched him kick and some of the other techniques that he was teaching back there, and they said, "This guy, this guy was a master." And much of that came from his TKD training, but it was all fine-tuned under Jubang Lei and Hadongdo. So that is that was another, okay, it went from myth to legend to that's the real world there. And he does all of his demonstrations, and it's the raw footage. It's not a completed video. It's the raw footage that was made. So you see them, okay, let's do that again, or hey, whatever. My favorite part is when Mike is holding. He had 15 guys in a line, as special forces guys, and he grounds himself and is holding. Yes, this is.
I'll go back to the one you were speaking about. I just passed it. The one.
Yeah, this is his 1-inch push or 1-inch punch.
Throws him into the chair. Watch that. This is the third time he does it, and it gets worse each time.
It gets worse each time. The fella when he's showing kicks.
Look at this now. I'll go back to the one you were just speaking about, but this is the one the trust he has in this man, Chuck Saunders.
Yeah, Chuck Sanders. They were inseparable.
Look at that. That's a axe, y'all, on his throat that Chuck is beating a 2x4 to his throat.
Chuck.
Here is
here we go.
There we go, right here. He
grounds himself. He grounds himself, and these guys are all lining up because they all kind of feel like we're going to pull him right off his feet, and they cannot do it. And so one of the guys further in the back, when you see it, one of the guys says, "Hey, this ain't, this isn't fair. We need to switch hands." And Mike just goes, "Yeah, do whatever you're going to do. Add a few guys." And
he locks in
grounds
hard.
himself.
Can't do anything. I mean, look at that.
Can't move him.
Nothing. I've got one more interesting one to where he throws a guy around like a rag doll. Guys, this is the website or on YouTube. Y'all need to get this. This is the full hour and 26 minutes of and I've got it muted, but you can hear Mike speaking. It's amazing to get this. Mike is running through some disarming techniques, and he's about to start doing some judo or sambo throws. That's Mike.
Mike was a multifaceted martial artist. He was teaching grappling and ground fighting back then, and that came from his jiu-jitsu background in Ontario. Chuck was a state champion in Oregon in jiu-jitsu at the University of Oregon in Corvallis, and then when he went to Bragg, he was North Carolina state champion in jiu-jitsu as well. Chuck was I've talked to classmates, I've talked to friends, I've talked to Jake Jakovenko and others that knew Chuck and Mike very well, and everybody I talked to said where Mike was absolutely phenomenal in his knowledge base and his ability to fight, that Chuck was better. And I talked to a couple of college classmates of Chuck's who described a couple of encounters with drunken college students that Chuck got into it with, and they said he was terrifying. He knocked 3 guys out one night at a hamburger place in a parking lot. But they were inseparable. They were yin and yang. Mike was suffering from PTS when he came back from Vietnam. Chuck would go over and sleep on the floor in his room so that when Mike woke up with night terrors, Chuck was there to calm him down and get him back to sleep. Just they were a phenomenal team. And Chuck was always the uke for Mike, which meant that Chuck learned more than anybody else.
He is showing guys how to break arms, legs. He does some judo throws. I'm not going to show it in its entirety, but he is showing you how to break a wrist right here and immediately immobile. Yep, he's about to break a shoulder too. I've watched this, but not in its entirety, guys. And if I recommend highly that you guys check this out, because if Chuck Norris is taking pictures with you and thinking you're the real deal Holyfield, then that ought to let you know how serious Mr. Mike was.
Yeah, he and Chuck and Bobby ended up training. It was an agency project funded by the agency in Nicaragua. They trained an 80-man commando company as an anti-terrorist unit, and it became it was the fire brigade unit. Wherever the fighting was the worst, they would deploy Mike and his commandos, and they would just flat take care of business. That commando unit, I discovered, I talked to several of the EEBI Nicaraguan officers, some who are in the United States and one who is still in Nicaragua. That company, when Somoza left in '79, a lot of the military knew they had to get out of Nicaragua because the Sandinistas were killing everybody and anybody that was associated with that particular project. Half the company exfiltrated from Nicaragua into Costa Rica, and then the other half went across the Gulf of Fonseca and surrendered their arms in El Salvador and La Union. And they were immediately picked up, brought back together, and they became the core of what became the Contra Wars in Nicaragua.
Wow.
And nobody knew that except for, that's why this guy, where the heck did he come from? And the people that were around him and, worked with him and gave him good guidance and direction, like Charlie Beckwith and others, he was a special human being. The soft side of Mike was he took care of people at Bragg. He helped guys that were, I told you yesterday, guys that were looking at medical discharges because of wounds or injuries. They'd come to Mike when they learned that he, of his own recovery and how he did it. He helped the guys, that's Chuck, better nutrition, steroid use, the weight. He was doing stuff that now today in the Thor program and Special Forces, so much of the Thor program, I could take it all the way back to what a Chanas was doing at Bragg. He was well ahead of his time.
To tie into that, isn't Mr. In Mad Max Mullen, didn't he kind of learn from Mike and carry on Mike's tradition in the modern Ranger Regiment?
Yep, Max Mullen is my brother from another mother. We've known each other for years. Max, the Ranger Hall of Fame, of course, uh, and Max was in Korea when he first learned about Mike. About all of the three books that Mike had out at the time. Was training in TKD, I believe, in Korea. Max went on to become, he's the only Ranger who served at all three Ranger battalions, at the Ranger Department, at Ranger School as an instructor. And he developed the first really serious hand-to-hand program for in modern times for the Rangers. And he based a tremendous amount of it on Mike's philosophy and on techniques that were in Mike's books and that type of a thing. Max actually, I have a double forward to the book, which is kind of unusual, but Max wrote the forward, one of the forwards, and the other was written by Mr. Ray Molina, who was the guy who ran a lot of the projects down in Nicaragua for Somoza. Very interesting guy, knew Mike very well. But Max, there's a YouTube video, I'll have to send you the link to it, of Tom Greer, who is sadly passed away several years ago. Tom was a Delta operator, and he and Max were very close. They did a Ranger hand-to-hand demonstration at Victory Pond that was put up on YouTube. And they don't do that. These guys were hit each other full contact. I mean, it's just brutal. But that's what Max taught when he was the hand-to-hand instructor for the Ranger Department. And again, another link back to the influence of Micah Chanas.
Heard a lot about I've spoken and I'm trying to get him on but he is besides being in the Ranger Hall of Fame, I mean his accolades are just unbelievable. What all he's managed to accomplish and besides, like you said, serving in all three, the first of the 75th, second, and then the third, I mean that is just unbelievable. He is one heck of a man. Heck, right here, it's like you said, he's I mean, Ranger Tab, Army Service. He's got Expeditionary Force, Army Achievement, 6th Medal, Legion of Merit, French Parachute Wings, German Sports Badge Jumps, Jungle Expert, Ranger. I mean, he's quite the man, to say the least. So I'll definitely be trying to get him on. And like you said, he's
one of the most humble human beings that I've come in contact with. He is also whenever I can't get linked up with Max as much as I would really like to, but whenever I'm around Max, inevitably I just end up laughing my ass off. He is one of the funniest, cleverest guys, and when he allows you to see that side of him, it's just hysterical. But you don't laugh at him.
No.
So
he
break your head.
Absolutely. I mean, he is a beast of a man. Even now, we're gonna have Mr. Gary Linder, one of the first L Company Rangers in '69, and he, Mr. Mike, looks up to him a lot, and they're always talking. And I've gotten good stories from both of them, from each of them talking to me and how they look up to each other. Mr. Gary being an older Ranger, Vietnam, but liking the way Mr. Max carries himself and still has that hardcore Ranger mentality. You know, Rangers lead the way for all y'all Rangers out there. Gosh, I mean, it is amazing how much is still coming up, along with the connections that we showed with Mr. Chuck Norris and his brother, him training the SEAL teams with Mr. Marcinko, all of the special forces teams at Bragg's. I mean, there's just numerous photos of him with teams he's training. And like I said, guys, I'll get that video out if I haven't already shared it and y'all haven't seen it. But he is with what you've done and with the men that he's come in contact with, he is one of the men that will never, his legacy will never die. That's for sure.
No, and for me personally and professionally, I in 2014 I wrote a story on Mike called Wounded Warrior that was published in Black Belt. It was because I've become because of my own experience and recovery and care and treatment, and then of the experience of the others that I came into contact with, and then learning how badly Mike was wounded and his phenomenal recovery. Nobody had presented him as being a successful wounded warrior. So that's what that article was about. And the book goes in depth into how that came about. But with Mike, this high school graduate from Ontario, Oregon, with the support network that he had there and just his inner determination, he simply decided that he was not going to be a cripple for the rest of his life. And so much of his story is ferreting out what steps took place in his mind, what he went through, because he went through what so many of us have gone through. He went through depression. He had, he had PTS. He was, here's a 20-year-old guy who, 2.5 years before was star track athlete, star basketball. Now he can't even walk unless he has, soft shoes and a brace. How did this guy do that? And I was blessed to meet and talk with and see, the folks that helped him along the way. But in the end, it was Micah Chanas or anybody else out here who's been hurt, injured, wounded, who said, I'm not going to be a cripple. I'll do whatever it takes and more to get back on my feet, literally. And he did it. And I think that's why he had so many friends in fifth group, of course. And he had so many friends I've learned in the SOG community, just at SOAR, talking with Tom Cunningham, CCN, talking with Larry Trimble,
Dog Pageant, I'm sure.
And it was because he was, they saw a kindred spirit. He had the credentials, and they saw a kindred spirit, and one who could take his, drop his drawers and say, look at my legs. How do you, look at my toes twisted up, and yet I can do this. What's holding you back? And I think that's why our community honors him to the degree that it does.
He could have a multiple books. He could have a movie because his speaking offline yesterday and in the Facebook group that you run for him is I mean, we need determination like that in our young men and men of all ages. I mean, there he was. I mean, literally told he's going to be crippled. He'll be lucky if he'll ever stand up again, much less walk or run or anything. And there he says, no, I'm not taking that. And next thing you know, he's, back in the swing of things, literally being run over by cars, taking 2x4s with an axe at his throat, teaching, getting his black belt from the Norris brothers. I mean, what more can you want in a story about a man that he's told he can't do something or will never be right again, and he proves you utterly wrong, and not only proves you wrong about himself, but that he can spread what he learned to fellow generations that helps out. And while we're still talking about him to this day.
Yeah, it's just a really good story. And as his mom told me, she said she was very reticent about a book, had been for years, and we went to breakfast in Ontario, one of the last times I saw her before she passed away, and she looked at me, she says, "You're going to write this book, aren't you?" And Pat, if you think Mike was tough, Mike's mom, that's where he got the grit. And I said, "Ma'am, I'm not writing anything about your son unless I have your permission." And she smiled and said, "You have it." And so the book is very much my commitment to Pat. Promise made is a promise kept, and she knew, and she kept everything Mike sent home, and all of those dark archives and documents and photos were turned over to me, and so it's a labor of joy and love for Pat, uh, because she knew who her son was. And one of the things she said was, "Greg, he was no angel." She said, "So you write it, but you write it straight, the good, the bad, and the ugly." But he did something that very few people have done, and she was absolutely correct.
Wow. I mean, what a man, and I'm so glad you've been doing what you do as a historian. It's I can't imagine his family, like you said offline yesterday, finally and today, finally getting to hear their brother and son's voice after 25 years of not hearing it. And as someone who's lost several family members the past 5 or 10 years, I would do anything to be able to hear their voice in an hour-long video. I just can't imagine, and that's just a testimony to your work and your work as a historian, and sticking with it and doing what you can to get the story preserved and out there. So it's
Yeah,
just
again,
amazing.
it's all as Colonel Roger Donlin for First Medal of Honor winner, 7th Group in Vietnam, and I'm blessed to know Roger. He's in hospice now, I believe. But Roger's thing was it's all teamwork. It's all teamwork, and this has been teamwork. I mean, it's just amazing. Like I said, the calls I've gotten, the emails. They look at the website, which Dan Branson put together, which has helped so much in clarifying and correcting the public record and the private record about Mike and Bobby and Chuck, Joe Camp. Uh, it's all teamwork. Teams survive where individuals die. And I would never, ever have gotten close to this unless Mike's people had stepped up and wanted to help. So I have a great story about Mike, and then I need to let you go.
That's
Uh,
fine. I was fixing to say, I think I've held you way too long compared to what we
no,
said
you
we were going
haven't.
to do.
I always like
Absolutely.
talking about stuff.
We're here and ready for a good Mike story.
This uh, this is one of my favorite stories about Chanas. When he got sent from the field hospital to Japan, and then in Japan, the doctor there, and I have a letter from the doctor there actually, uh, thought the same thing as the field hospital physician. He said, this leg's got to go. He said, but this guy is so young, and Mike's personality, I'm sure, played into it as well. But they sent him to Letterman, and in Letterman, they decided, well, we're not going to take the leg. They did multiple surgeries, and then he was in a body cast for 7 months at Letterman Army Hospital. And during that period of time, the lead doctor for him just kept reiterating over and over and over again, if everything heals up, and if we don't have to take the leg, and if, you're still not going to be able to walk, to run. You're going to have a cane. You're going to be on crutches. Matter of fact, there's a great picture of Mike on his crutches at home when he was doing his last few months long distance to Letterman. And Mike just simply wouldn't accept that. Well, Chuck Sanders would come down from the University of Oregon during this time period. He hadn't gone in the Army yet. And Chuck would work with Mike and that. And one day, and now Mike was a Spec 4 still, which is crucial to this story. He was a Spec 4. One day, Chuck goes and finds this doctor and says, "You need to come down to the field with me. Mike's down there. You need to come down to the track field." And the doctor said, I don't have the time for that. I'm not doing that. I don't have the time for that. No, you really need to come down to the, Mike wants to show you something. Well, tell Mike to come up here and talk to me. I have too much to do, too much. So Chuck kidnapped him and literally through pain compliance, my understanding is, got him down to the track field there at the hospital. And standing there on the track was Mike. And Mike ran around the track. Not well, not fast, but he got out of the body cast, and Chuck and he had been working on stuff, and he loped around that field and came to a stop in front of that doctor and said, "You were wrong."
Wow.
And that's how Mike lost his stripe from Spec 4 and was made a PFC again.
Oh my gosh.
But I don't think he really cared. And
No,
but that's one of my favorite stories, and the Chuck would, do that, and but that was the never ever quit, and that's what made him the Ranger that he was, even with only 2 months on the ground. And that's what made him, the man that he was, and the soldier, and why he was successful in Nicaragua with his company. You were wrong. Look at me.
I'm
Pretty
walking
cool.
and leading a team.
Yeah.
Wow. I thank you for going over with us today. I know I held you a little too long. We would definitely love to have you back in the future if you'd be open and wanting to come back and share about anything. We'd always love to have you back.
Oh, well, I appreciate that, and thank you again for what you're doing, and I'm glad that we got a lot of the things that you're putting together, got them back, or getting them back to the command historian at Bragg.
Absolutely.
And all that good stuff. And I'll see you at SOAR this next year, brother.
Absolutely. And thank you again. It's been an honor. And I'm finally glad we got to connect. And I will be in touch with you here soon.
All right, man.
Have a good day.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Let's see here in stream. All righty, guys. That was that was pretty good. I know it was a little thanks, guys. I know it was a little unconventional. We didn't get much questions and stuff in, so we'll have Mr. Greg back on. But I was really wanting you guys to hear about not only SOAR but the SOA as a whole, and to hear its formations and how it came to pass. Mr. Mike is Chanas is an absolute was an absolute beast. I've linked the Facebook page if y'all are on Facebook. If not, I can start getting some stuff out on Mr. Frank because he's let me Mr. Mike, because he's let me use the website and get pictures and stuff all that on. So we're going to get him back to talk because he's got a lot of experience with a lot more experiences with SOG vets. And he also did a lot of combat. He's got a CIB with 1 star, meaning he was in 2 conflicts. So we're going to have him back. Tomorrow is going to be great because we're actually going to have a Ranger, our first Ranger, Gary Linder. F Company, 58th Alert Division. I forgot his first one. And then, of course, in 69, it folded up and became L Company of the 75th Rangers. So tomorrow at, I'm not sure if it's during the day or in the evening. So it may be a late show to where we can have a lot of people joining. I think it's at 6. But yeah, Rangers lead the way. We are going to have a hell of a show with the stuff he's going to be talking about. He sent me all of his books, and I've finished 2 of them, starting the 3rd one right now, and it's going to be great. So, and I've got some guys I'll be calling today when I get done off here to start getting some more interviews set up, because Ed Walkoff will be back in the mix again next week probably. We got the Wild Carrot, and we've got gosh, who else do we have? Yeah, who else we've got? Well, we've got several guests coming up that are they're going to be good. So you guys have a great day. Thanks for joining me this early. Hope you all are doing good. I'm freezing. It's like 38 down here, so I'm staying inside all day and trying to stay warm. I will see y'all later. Have a good day.